So do we invent antennas or discover them, right? Because physics exists. It doesn't, we don't invent physics, right? We discover what it can do, right? And somebody the other day asked me, where the hell did my DX Commander vertical concept come from? Well, I'll show you in a minute, because I've got something here I want to show you. First of all, some of you, not all of you, right, are going to be obsessive about antennas, right? When I first got my license, which frankly with my ADHD and autism and everything else was the only exam I've ever passed in my life, because I was that obsessive about ham radio, okay? The science of RF, because it is a science-based hobby, right? We like to think, you know, some people say, oh, it's a sort of a social hobby or a communications hobby. It is science, right? It really is. And I was absolutely obsessed. And my local club, luckily it wasn't a bad club in those days. Yeah, all clubs have problems, right? But it wasn't a bad club. But there was this kind of cellar area with a really almost ant beast infested roll of wire, you know, on a plywood reel. And it was twin core. Somebody from BT, British Telecom. I think it was what they call a down lead, what they connect from the comms post, you know, down a drop wire down to a phone, all right? It was very old, right? Smelly, and that sort of thing. I built a little razor blade contraption so I could pull these through and split the wire, because if you just did that, it wouldn't quite fall apart, but the insulation would come off one of the sides. Long story. But with that roll of wire, and there must have been, you know, 300 metres of this stuff, 1,000 feet, I made hundreds, I'm not joking, hundreds of antennas, you know, dipoles, loops, verticals. I had some old copper tubing. I made a loop-fed 6-metre antenna. I've got a little hydraulic bump-up mast I've had for years. I used to put some antennas on that, made homebrew Yagis, balance. I've fried stuff and broken more stuff. The process of doing that, because there's a lot of things they don't teach you, and there's a lot of things that you've got a problem with that nobody actually knows the answer, all right? The only way you can get the answer is by doing it and trying it yourself. So that's what I did. That's how I learned that a very low to the ground dipole on 40 metres works fine, okay? For that, you know, 200, 300, 400 mile, 600 kilometre hop. I learned that if you raise it up a bit, the SWR would change, because as the antenna goes up, it needs to get a bit bigger, right? I learned that impedance changes as well with height, and there's a little graph, right, that is in the books. But I mean, Wendy and I, we had no money. I had 2 kids, working my socks off, and you know, the luxury of buying a book when I can just invent it myself or discover it myself was fine. Now, Wendy and I went to Cornwall in 2013, so that is, my goodness, 12 years ago. So I was already kind of 10 years a ham, you know. I took with me a lot of gear, poles and everything else, because I was going to rig up a fan dipole rotatable, right? But literally, as I got out of the car, I realised that the breeze off the sea was going to be so intense that my plan was going to fail. So, but I had 2 or 3 actually DX Commander poles, right? Because I was already selling DX Commander poles literally out the boot of my car, right? To make pennies to buy gear and coax and connectors and everything else for the hobby. And I just reinvested it. So I'd spend £200 or £300 on a pack of poles and then make £150, you know, off the back of it. So while I was there, I literally brought all my tools and I had some plastic. I made a vertical, and this is it. This is my first ever vertical. I drilled some holes, all right? I'd bolts and everything with me. I'd soldered this to an SO239. I drilled a hole through. This is some araldite epoxy. All right, so that was going to be my radiator here, and these were going to be my grounds, my radials, which of course in those days I didn't realise I only probably needed 4, right? And then I could have doubled up, I could have put 4 on each, and that would have given me 16. So that was my first ever vertical. And I also made another one because I wanted a reflector. In fact, there was 2 of these. I don't know where the other one's gone. Again, I made this. It was a 2-week holiday, and I literally, the only thing I did was play radio for 2 weeks. It's the most development I've ever done in my life. And that went well. I made a 3-element vertical array. I had faced it. I was literally on the beach, faced it to the USA, had the ACOM 2000 with me, and I'm telling you, I didn't spare the horses. And from about midnight till 6 in the morning, 3 or 4 nights, I ran a massive pilot to the US. There was stations in the US, 100-watt stations, that were saying they'd never heard Europe that loud. And that's when I discovered, the benefit of a 3-element array. I've got 4 square now, which is probably not quite as good, but getting on for it. Power and the sea, the ocean. You've got that basically reflective surface out in front. So I was getting probably 10 to 13 dB gain off the amplifier. I was getting another 10 dB off the sea, and maybe another 4 or 5 dB off the array. I mean, it would have been a huge amount of power. You'd probably, inland, you'd have had to run something like 50 kilowatts to be the same signal. And that got me thinking. So after, a week of this, because I'm down there for 2 weeks, I just came across the idea, because I'd built a fan dipole before. I thought, why don't I run another element up the side of this thing? Would it work like a fan dipole? Now, by this time I had bought some books. I'd never seen it. I have actually since seen a fan vertical where, you've got 2 trees with a wire, and you've got all the elements longer and longer and longer coming off it to a centre feed point. Anyway, I did that. It didn't quite work, actually, because the element was too close together. But I made another one for 20, 15, 10 and 6. And proportionally, the spacing was better, and that worked. But when I got back, I tried it again, but I made some bigger plates, and made, because I recognised it was probably the separation of the elements. So I discovered, right? Didn't invent. I discovered how it worked. Now, what I invented was the packaging, right? How do you turn that into something that you can deploy and use? Right, that is an invention, but I'm not inventing the physics. Right, so there's a mild difference, isn't there? I've had people copy it and stuff, but the internet generally, literally a guy copy it, literally every part of it, and I think the internet had a go at him because I don't mind someone who recreates an idea or rediscovers or reinvents something that, I've inspired them to do. But it is not right, by the way, to literally copy a design. A design, you'll find, is normally copyrighted anyway. In fact, I have copyrighted the design of our plates years ago. But if you did go out and make 100 of these yourself, right, you'll get support emails. I get 2 or 3 a week. And I know how to deal with those people, all right? Because, not the people, I know how to deal with the problems, all right? Because I've spent 24 years nailing problems. I know for a fact that it's probably the rig expert. It's probably a connector. That sounds like coax. This email sounds like a tuning issue, all right? It's not until you have been obsessive over years and years and years that you can nail a problem quite quickly. That's how I've got the best job in the world. Sometimes, don't get me wrong, it's the worst job in the world as well. But today is generally the best job in the world. I've got a fantastic son and his partner, Gina. They work next door. He does all the hard work. Right? All I have to do is carry on my hobby, building stuff in the field. If some of it turns into a product, oh, well, whatever. A lot of things I do, as you probably know, don't turn into a product. We've got 6 or 7 products that we sell that I believe is commercial enough that we can make to a price point that will package nicely that we can sell. There's plenty of ideas I've got. I think, yeah, that would be great. It would be too expensive. It's like the Step IR. Fantastic idea, right? As an invention, right? Discovering how the physics works, inventing a package that worked. I think it was tremendous. Hopefully I've just inspired you a little bit, okay? Play with your wire antennas, all right? Be as obsessive as I am at the expense of maybe your marriage. Luckily, Wendy's still with me, but there we are. All right, guys, I will see you next time. Enjoy your radio. Bye for now.